Well, hello again, and thank you for coming back so swiftly. So, for those of you that have seen forums at the Symposium before, we're going to be a little bit different today. I'm going to do a bit of a dimbleby, because in the old days we had literally 90 minutes. Well, today we've only got an hour, so we've got a lot to get through, we hope, unless you're going to sit there and look at us and not ask any questions. So, what we're going to do is offer you the chance to raise some questions and, or just a point or anything, and hopefully we will find some interesting discussion in amongst the panel. So, we're going to have a few rules today because we can't have it to go on too long. So, this goes for both you out there and you good people up here. If anybody's response is going on just a little bit long, you're going to get that. Which means, could you please sort of, draw it in as soon as possible. If you get that, it means really end. And if I just keep going, it's over. Right, okay. So we've got to manage time. So I'm going to introduce you to the panel today. I'll go from left to right because we've just seen the good Eltjo Haselhoff. You know this man now, astrophysicist, Dutch researcher of crop circles and many other things, and a master guitarist. Eltjo Haselhoff. And indeed, this is the Crop Circle Corner, really. One of the world-class crop circle researchers. You know this lady, many of you. Fantastic crop circle researcher and, of course, photographer and author, Lucy Pringle. And on my left, we have Marcus Allen, known to many of you from Nexus Magazine, but also a very good speaker, been on this platform many times before, and one of the world experts in questioning the moon landings, amongst other things. Marcus Allen. And for those of you that were here last night, we have, of course, Mary Rodwell, who has researched many things, including extraterrestrials and contactee experiences, all of that. Mary Rodwell. And on the far left, now, a gentleman who you will see more of tonight because Ken is our special Saturday evening speaker. You will find out more about Ken later on, but cutting a long story short, Ken's been much involved with kind of, if you like, Middle East, trying to raise awareness of what's going on there, peacemaking. Ken was one of those on one of the ships that got boarded by the Israelis a few years ago when they were taking goods into the Palestinians. So there's a long story there. We're going to hear more from Ken tonight. But for now, Ken O'Keefe. So, let's begin. So we won't ask every member we won't say, right, now you say something and you and you and you. If there's something to say, we'll say it, but I might direct to. But, if you don't feel you want to say anything, that's fine. So is there anybody out there who would like to set the ball rolling? Well, immediately we see hands going up. So we've got roving mics. Di, if you could take the mic over there. Let's see. Our first question.
Yeah, good afternoon, panel. Does anybody know the reason why the farmers are destroying the crop circles virtually on creation this year? Or is it just simply the easy answer, the government's paying them a nice big fat subsidy to do so?
Well, I think this seems like a question for Lucy. Go ahead.
How do I answer?
Yeah, just speak in and it should work.
Can you hear me? Yeah, oh good. Yes, there is a bit of a problem, and it's very hard to actually point a direct finger, but it seems to me that it depends how you approach the farmers. The farmers have a special mentality. It's their land, it's their livelihood, and if they're told that the formation is going to go up onto the internet and that hundreds of people are going to go into their field, they're freaked out. And they're freaked out in a very, very big way. It's not as though we're getting less circles, we're getting just as many. But it's the approach which is now being taken, and I'm not going to mention any names at all, because everybody is on their own journey, and they think they've got their own way of going about things. But this is the one fact. Because in the old days, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about it in my talk, you used to be able to approach the farmers on an individual basis. Now there seems to be almost a sort of control factor going on, that you have to go through certain channels in order to be allowed into circles. And that means that farmers have to be approached by certain channels, and it's a way of dealing or not dealing with the farmers. That is the only problem, as I see it.
Eltjo, do you have anything to add to that as a crop circle doyen?
Well, all I can say, we don't have it that much in the Netherlands yet. We have many formations in the Netherlands, but we don't have a real farmer problem. Although we are pretty well, we try to be very organized in keeping the land protected and make very clear also on websites that, yes, you may get entrance, but please make sure to talk to the farmer first. We warn the farmers what can happen. So and if the farmer says, well, I'd rather not have anyone coming in my fields, then we just won't mention it. So then having said that, of course, we're also a little bit behind still with respect to crop circle phenomenon in England, because it started much earlier here. We don't have that long history. So maybe in a couple of years, the same thing is going to happen in the Netherlands. But so far, we don't have it yet.
Okay. So, I mean, Marcus, I'll just add something. I think also it is cyclical as well. You may find in a few years' time, get another generation of farmers come through. It could change. We'll see. Marcus, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just a very brief point. This one on? Good. There was a report quite recently of a combine harvester being wrecked by some stones that had been placed inside a crop circle, inside a formation. Now, the farmer allowed the crop circle to be there for people to enter it, but whoever put the stones in there then cost £20,000 of repairs to a combine harvester. You can imagine that the farmer was not at all pleased, and he immediately forbade anybody from entering. Now, whether that story is correct or not, it makes sense that a farmer having to spend a vast amount of money on his combine at the time of year when he needs to use it 24 hours a day is just not acceptable.
It was the one under Milk Hill a couple of years ago.
Milk Hill formation.
Milk Hill,
Okay. Do you have anything to say, or are you happy to move to another question? Right, let's go to another question. Right, thank you very much for that. Next question, we'll press this side. Oh, we have an interesting person here.
Sorry, it's not a question, it's just a reply to the previous question. Well, I think the way I see it...
Can I just interrupt? This is Francine Blake, by the way, of the Wiltshire Crop Circle Study Group. So, yes, indeed.
What we're seeing is that we are dealing with the sons of the fathers, and the sons are not going to do the same thing as the fathers. And if you remember, it took us about 25 years to get the farmers on board in the past. It was very difficult. And I think we're seeing a similar thing. The young sons are coming in, they're not going to be subjected to this, and there's a very strong reaction, amongst other things, of course, but that has a big part played into it, I think.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a new question. Are we going on to a new subject? I'll leave it to you two to choose. Yep.
I'm sorry, it's the same subject.
Oh.
I've never looked very much at crop circles. Could you tell us in a nutshell, quickly, is it purely the Earth's energies pulling the grass down?
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
In a very nutshell.
There's really no nutshell aspect to that. It's a combination of a descending force, it's an electric force which descends, and it combines with an electromagnetic force below from the aquifers, but where this originating force comes from, we don't actually know.
I think that's the best way to leave that. There are many theories. Thank you. Okay, let's have a new subject, please. So.
Oh, yes. I have a question for Mary. We were fascinated by your talk yesterday, but you had so much to tell. You sort of rushed through it. And the question I really have is, what are the main messages these children, these very special children, have for the ill population, the sort of limited, for the general population, that we don't have these children to talk to?
So, as I understand it, you're wanting to know the broad message that the new children coming in that seem to understand why they've come, yes, for all of us as a species.
What we should change in our life to reach a new level.
Well, there's many things. The most important thing is that they're asking us to own our truths and to understand that we all are multidimensional and that we all can do the things that they can do. But what this 9-year-old from Northern Europe told me is, she said, Mary, human beings are absolutely amazing. And they can do everyone can do amazing things. But the trouble is they have to believe it first. And the trouble is, on this planet, we are programmed out of our awareness. And as she said, when they go to school, the children are programmed out of their light, out of their knowing, because they're programmed into a very limited box that basically gets you to deny who you are. So they're actually saying now, how about we start to believe again, start to believe in ourselves and to believe in that knowing that we were all born with, and to start to touch on that again, to that knowing that all of you were born with awareness. All of you had experiences perhaps as a child that you were told later wasn't valid or something that you can accept within yourselves. And this is about actually now going back to that and accepting all the things that you really know but have been taught not to believe in again. And this is the message, I think, the children are saying.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, some more questions. I'll let Di and Sheila choose because I can't see everybody from here. So,
this is another question for Mary. Yesterday, when you were showing us your slides, you showed us extraterrestrials, many different forms, who you said communicated by telepathy. Then there were others, there were children who received writing and speech. Now, the ETs who communicate by telepathy, do they also have writing and speech? And do the others who have writing and speech, do they have telepathy?
I think they all have those available to them, but because we're used to using language, that they will often speak in a language to make us comfortable. But what I remember, one gentleman who was a scout who lost his scout cap on the craft said to me that when he went up, it felt like initially like there was this buzz, this noise, and he couldn't understand until somehow or other it was like he tuned his own frequency into the frequency of the communication on the craft. But we all have telepathic abilities, but what is true too, we are taught how to speak on this planet. So they will approach us in whatever our awareness is ready to understand. But ultimately, I think, when we are able to accept the fact that we can communicate telepathically, then ultimately that's how it is. And it will be as also like compressed files of information, that one symbol, for example, would fill this room with encyclopedias in terms of its knowledge. So some things aren't translatable into a language that we can understand. Some are, like the little girl was able to translate some of the language, but some of it she said she couldn't because it was a different format. It was a different kind of file, if you like. So that's what some of the symbols are. They're like compressed files of information that when you're ready for them, you can access. And I think that I call it the software for the new computer. The new upgrade human is going to operate in a multidimensional way where it's going to actually need new software. And I think this is the software. That's why they can't access them now. They're saying it's a timing thing, Mary. I can't work out what these symbols are that I've been given. And when I've done regressions, they've actually said to me, I'm being told it's timing. And I think the timing is waiting for a time when we are, if you like, given enough of our DNA is altered, or not so much altered as switched on, because we only use 95% of 95% of is actually considered, junk DNA at the moment. They're still not understanding how it works. When enough of that is turned on, I think we will be operating like a supercomputer, and we're going to need new software. And I think some of this is the software for the new human, the new computer, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a question for the rest of the panel, perhaps? Who have we got? Oh, there's a lady down here. Oh, no, we'll go to someone new if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'd like to ask Marcus, what are your ideas on the shot-down plane?
Actually, well, I'm sure a lot of people might have something. Well, what are your ideas on the shot-down plane, if you didn't hear that at the back?
On the shot-down
Presumably
plane,
we mean...
Or the disappearing plane.
The Ukraine event. Okay.
Well, just before we look at that, I would like to say how very impressively I felt that the Dutch nation honoured their dead when they returned them from Ukraine. It was a very impressive display of national togetherness. The shot-down plane, I consider it was a pure mistake. It was probably operated by the Ukrainian rebels who got hold of this very high-tech piece of kit, didn't actually know too much about it, saw a plane up. Now, bear in mind that 3 planes had been shot down prior to that one, and they were Ukrainian military. There was a military transport, and 2 fighters had also been shot down. And they just took aim at something. Now, I don't know if you can see a plane at 32,000 feet. You can probably see it exists, but you may not know what it is. You won't hear it. You might just see it in a clear sky. And they thought, oh, whoopee, target, let's go. And then they realized their mistake, that it was the transmission appears to have been recorded where the operators were admitting that they had shot down a civilian plane, which they hadn't intended to do. Recently, the Americans have said that they recorded the whole thing. They know where the missile was launched from. They know who was doing it. And bear in mind, American technology is pretty sophisticated, though they may not admit to it. When they say you can read a newspaper headline from space, that was 20 years ago. Technology has moved on. They can probably read the instruction manual from space now. So if that was happening, and it almost certainly was, the keyhole satellites, the KH-12s, which are the spy satellites launched by the space shuttle, these would have picked up enough information for certain military nations to know what was going on. What they then do about it politically is a completely different story. And that's the phase we're in at the moment, the political maneuvering to try to shuffle off blame. So we'll just see how that works out.
I mean, on that score, Ken, I'd like to bring you in here. I mean, geopolitics being one of your subjects. Do you have a view on what's going on out there? What are your feelings about it?
Well, I think the first agenda whenever an event like this occurs is to question who benefits. There are exceptions to the rule, and this may very well be one of them. It may be an accident, and it just happened. Things happen. But there is a very well-concerted effort, if you ask me, to instigate a third world war. If we look at the policies of the so-called leaders of the Western world and in general political thought and society, either these people are complete idiots or they want a global conflict. So this would fit in very nicely to that agenda, very, very nicely, and to ignore that would be foolish in my mind. However, it doesn't change the fact that really there are exceptions to the rule. But the first question for me is always who benefits. And generally, who benefits is in the best position to actually carry out such events, and they've done it. We've got too many examples, to cite in an hour, that's for sure.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything to add? Are you happy with that? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, another question, please. I think we're going to have someone new because we've got a lot of hands up. So perhaps someone over that side. Someone over that side. We may come back to you if we get a chance. Okay.
Hello there. I wonder what you thought about the story on the internet regarding the second plane, the twin plane in Israel. See the gentleman on the end. You read these stories, and I've heard your version. And
you may need to explain this for anybody that doesn't.
Well, in truth, let me make an apology with regard to that. I have not looked into it sufficiently to be able to speak authoritatively. So I've at my age of 45, I've become wise enough to know that you don't speak about things that you really don't have any specific kind of grounded understanding. So I'll be happy to learn from people in the audience or someone.
Can I ask what you know? Would you like to explain that for those?
I read that there was a twin plane that was identical. When Boeing make the planes, they make a twin. And I found out on the internet that a Florida-based company had bought the plane, and it'd been parked on a runway in Israel. And that was basically what I heard.
I think basically there are so many rumours out there, it is impossible to know
and it
what's
said
true
that the
and what
plane hadn't actually been taken out from the ground because it had been placed there and detonated from underneath.
So basically, yeah.
Well, there was tracks.
It's a theory.
There was tracks going into the site. There was no burn marks on the grass. The bodies was intact. The passport problem coming out the back of the car. There's a lot of evidence there to say that something else happened there regarding the passports were actually punched with a hole that proved that they were possibly older passports that they'd sent back because they were brand new, the same as in 9/11.
I mean, I would caution there, I mean, obviously, being a conspiracy theorist, I have to read these things. I'm not personally convinced by those theories at the moment. There's a lot of stuff that I don't think makes sense, but we don't know at the moment. I'd be cautious, and you need to know what the reliability of the sources are, but okay. All right, thank you. Right, another question, please.
Hello, this is for Eltjo. You were talking about in your sleep entities were communicating with you. Can you elaborate, please?
Yeah, I think so.
If you could speak nearer the microphone.
This,
thank you.
Like again, I don't think it's very special at all. I don't think we all have had these experiences. The only difference is that the way you remember it. See, the point is when you are falling asleep, you have a dream, for example, you know that when you wake up, sometimes your dream just escapes, right? If you wake up in the middle of the night, you know you were dreaming something, but you can't quite remember what. It's very hard to remember your dreams, and that's because, I'm not a neuroscientist, but you have this parasympathetic and the sympathetic part of your brains, and I think they have their own memories. So everything you dream is stored in one part of the memory. When you wake up, another part of the memory takes over. And that's why you don't have a clear remembrance of what exactly happened. And you might have the idea it was just a dream. But if you pay more attention to it and try to remember your dreams, and I do that sometimes if I want to fall asleep again. So I wake up and I want to fall asleep again and try to remember my dream. It's very hard to do it. And then you're sort of balancing on this point. And then you get a clearer idea of what's happening in between those two states of being awake and asleep. And yes, I found a very clear difference between dreaming about persons and some occasions where there is very clearly somebody near me that I can see, that tells me things that are very much, I mean, you can feel them physically. It's completely unlike any other dream. They're there and they're trying to communicate to me. And I know when I wake up, I've been told something, and it was it was an entity, a person. Sometimes it's a man, sometimes it's a woman, and they say things, and I say, it probably was a dream. I said, no, it was not a dream, because they told me something, and it was very good. It gave me great insight. Unfortunately, I woke up, and my wrong part of the brain is operational again. I can't remember what, but I do remember it was something very special. And there's no way to convince you of that. The only I can do is either ignore it, or accept it and see what I can do with it.
You're not convincing me. I'm asking you because I want you to hear what you've seen. Because this is something I see and I understand. And I want you to see if you have.
Well, the point is I don't know what I've seen. But for example, since a couple of years, when I fall asleep, I hear sentences, words, voices, you know. And this is a safe place to tell that I hear voices in my head without the risk of being carried away on a stretcher. So
I'm sure they can take all of us away on that basis.
No, but the point is that it happens in what I think are different states of mind, and there's no open communication channel between those different states of mind. So when I wake up, I have a vague memory, but I don't know exactly what it was. But I do remember when I fall asleep, there are voices in my head, and I hear very clear sentences, except the sentences are, for example, like, yes, but it's always like, no, in any case, we must... like that, you know, and that's what I hear. And the funny thing is, it is in my head. It is as clear as if I'm talking to you now. You're talking to me, but it's at the same time. I know if I would put a microphone in my ear, you couldn't record it, right? It's not an acoustic sound. It's in my brains. And when I go deeper, and I got into these more deeper connections, then my brains are so much switched off, the brains that I'm using now, that I cannot get the information back. And that's what I'm trying to do. So all I remember is something very special, something very real. It's absolutely not a dream. And maybe it does something to me that I'm not supposed to be aware of when I'm awake. I don't know. I don't care, I want to figure it out anyway, I'm going to keep on trying. But that's pretty much my experience. And I think we all have it. I don't think it's very special. But you can just say, oh, I had a dream. That was a strange dream, and go on with your life. Or you can try to think a little bit more about it and see if there's anything more behind it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Another question?
Thank you. You have to forgive this question if it sounds a little bit naive. This is my first symposium, and it's very, very interesting indeed. And I haven't been on this sort of spiritual path very long either. But I'm really struck by the lectures. You know, yesterday, especially the one about the music industry, really was hard for me to digest. But looking at the lectures, it's like, seeing it from fresh eyes, you know, the banking industry and money, we're being mind-controlled. The music industry, we're being mind-controlled. With war everywhere, we're being mind-controlled. Fracking, we're being mind-controlled. It just seems, looking at it, we're all bloody doomed. You know, is there any hope? There's only a few hundred people in this room, and it's just a general question, but are we on a highway to hell or something? Or is there hope for us? Because otherwise, I'm going to go over depressed and think, I'll go back to my old life, thank you very much. And that's how it seems, anyway.
I certainly hope not. And to be fair, I think nearly all speakers have given the other side, which is if you're informed, you've got more power. Would anybody like to respond to that?
Well,
Lucy, go on.
Yes, I think I would in a way, and I'm terribly sorry that that's how you feel.
Not all of it, but can we make a difference in this?
Can you make a difference?
Yes, I'm sure.
Huge,
I'm sure.
absolutely huge. As Andy said at the end of it, take the leap. We can all make a huge difference. All as individuals and as a group, we can make an enormous difference. And I'm terrifically positive at the moment. I know a whole lot of ghastly, gloomy things are going on, but if one looks at and a lot of people say the young are so awful today, but they're not. I think the majority of people are absolutely wonderful. The majority of young are wonderful, and somehow we seem to dwell on the negative, and I think we've got to focus on the positive. And you can be very positive by sort of changing this around in your mind. And instead of looking at the negative, I can remember something that if somebody said, oh, something really bad has happened to me today, instead, okay, I fell over and I stubbed my toe and I can't do that the next thing. I can then transform it to say, I'm jolly lucky I didn't break my ankle.
Yes, but these big monoliths are talking about the banking industry, the music industry, like how, all right, don't buy records anymore, but is that enough? That's what I'm trying to say.
To be fair, but I don't think that was the message of Mark's talk. Not buy records, it'd be discerning in what you buy and what you give your energy to. Actually, I'd like to bring Marcus in briefly. If I can.
I'm talking
Marcus,
on a very
Marcus, you work
level.
for Nexus Magazine. You hear people ringing up with every conspiracy theory under the sun. How do you cope? What's the positive?
It's wonderful. I love it. If you haven't read Nexus Magazine, you've got a treat in store. We got them all outside.
Advert.
Thank you, Andy. That just emphasises it. Thank you. This may be your first symposium. I have to say it's my 22nd. And I've heard it all several times. And at first it got very, oh dear, it's negative. Oh, when's the world going to get better? Oh shit, oh dear, what's going on? What can we do? And I thought, hang on, stop it. As Lucy says, you emphasize the positive. Yes, there are negative things out there. Of course there are. And the world changes one person at a time, very gradually. And it speeds up as more people are aware of the problems. And there are problems. Andy identified a great many of the problems. Several of the other speakers have identified the problems. And it may well be that the speakers are apparently putting out the negative side of it. This is what newspapers sell. You don't buy a newspaper with good news in it. Positive news, which puts out good news, is given away. You pay good money for the bad news. It's something in the human psyche that looks for the bad side of everything. If you say, okay, that happens, there is bad, there are terrible things going on out there, but there are good things going on out there as well. And the more you emphasize the good things, then it becomes easier to cope. Yes, there are bad things. It doesn't matter. People accuse several publications I can't mention, as publishing bad news. No, it's not. You have to be aware of it. You have to have the information to make the decision for your future. And if you don't have the information, you can't make a good decision. You may make a wrong decision. That doesn't matter, because at least you've tried it and done it, and it didn't work, so try something else. And as Lucy said, if you trip over, you stub your toe, you didn't break your ankle. Good news. There's good news in everything. Every time you look at something, there is good news there, or there is positive movement. So, welcome to the symposium. You may make another 20-odd years. You'll find that your attitude towards it will change over time.
Ken, I believe you have something to say.
I think your evolution is a microcosm of what everyone goes through when you start to break free from the illusions of this world, because they're pervasive, they're everywhere. And when you start to come into understanding of the way the world really functions and just how dark and nasty it can be, especially if we look at Gaza right now.
You can speak into the mic a bit more. Yes.
If we look at Gaza right now as a recent example, and there's plenty more, it's natural to feel discouraged and frustrated and angry and sad and all of this. But my experience, and I believe the experience of many other people who've endeavored down this path, is that at the point at which you start feeling negative and actually start feeling empowered is one that will come if you keep going down that path of searching for the truth. It becomes very liberating from my perspective, having lived away in such a way that, you know, I haven't been afraid to look into the dark, deep realities of the world and have looked deeper and deeper into it. I've become more and more liberated by understanding these things, seeing them for what they are. And what eventually happens is that you start getting beyond the identification of problems and start seeing the solutions. And once you start actually being receptive to that, it's amazing just how easy the solutions are. They're there, they're waiting for us, and it's really a matter of reframing the way we look at the world, going back to what you've said. And when you reframe that, you'll see that every problem that we have can be solved very quickly. We need to change the way we look at the world, however.
Okay. Eltjo.
I think I actually agree with that, and it links into the remark I made at the end of my presentation that, you know, what people should do, is pay less attention to the how and more attention to the why, because everything that has to do with manipulation, you know, it's all about the how. You know, how should you do things? How must we do? If you always ask yourself the why question, why am I doing what I'm doing? What's the reason? Why am I doing this? And why is that person saying that to me? And why does he want me to do this? So if you ask these questions and just keep on looking for the answers and just not do things if you don't have a good reason for yourself to do it, then you become very hard to manipulate. You know, if you're always asking the why questions, it's much harder for other people to make you do what they want you to do. And if you're only worried about the how, and somebody tells you how, then you're done. You're following it and you're going, and then you give the power away to other people. Just start with the why question. Why are you getting out of bed in the morning? First question. Well, answer it for yourself. And then just go and go like the rest of the day, and you'll find many answers.
Okay, thank you. Right, time is moving on. There's a lady waving her hand over there. Yep, wait 1 second, the microphone nearly with you. There we are.
We are also in the age of Aquarius now, which is to do with the mind. And I think it was from the 21st of December 2012. So we're babes in this age, and I think we're easy to be manipulated mentally. And probably Wi-Fi and mobile phone, all those things are part of it. So to feel depressed mentally, I think the lady was saying, might be to do with this new age.
Yes, shift is always uncomfortable. All right, so yes, thank you for that observation. Thank you. Okay, question? We got out there.
Hello, my question's for Mary. You spoke briefly about the children being able to understand hieroglyphics and the language of some of the formations. One of the most spectacular ones was the large formation with 3 lines of hieroglyphics coming down. Did the children recognize that language? And if so, did they give you an interpretation?
Actually, I've not had any interpretation of that from the children. I've had a lot of others, older star kids, mention that they have a kind of energetic understanding rather than a linear one. As one little boy said to his teacher, you teach and think in a linear way, I think in spirals. So it was. So I think a lot of this is going to be felt rather than cognitively understood from our left brain. I think this is more about us starting to trust what we're feeling here, and the knowing here is when we're finally going to get where we're going.
Lucy, do you want to add anything? Just for anybody that doesn't know, I think the formation you're referring to was 2009, and it was like sort of a swallows type array with these sort of bits and bobs dangling down like code. Some said it was Mayan or whatever. Did you have a view on that formation at all?
Well, not particularly. I did go into it, and it was a beautiful one. I think you could interpret it in many ways, really. But I think this is again where the crop circles are so absolutely fascinating, because people often say, oh, what's the interpretation of this and what's the interpretation of that? And I always think this is a personal journey for everybody. And everybody's interpretation, so far as I'm concerned, is absolutely right. It's the one that actually sits comfortably with you. Certain people chemists will look at it from that point of view. Theologians will see it from another point of view. And so far as I'm concerned, they're all spot on in relation to themselves. And this is what I think the phenomenon is about, what it's doing to us, and how we're evolving as the phenomenon takes us on our journeys.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Question over there, if anybody's got a microphone. In fact, several questions.
Hi there, this is a question also for Mary. I loved your talk last night, and I wanted to ask, and I'm not trying to put doom and gloom on, I'm doing a talk later and it's filled with exuberance, so I promise it will be light, and I'm not asking you to introduce dark into this topic particularly, but I have read quite a lot that talks about certain entities, and some of those species of greys that you spoke about, either having untoward designs for the human race, or having been hijacked by entities of a much more vibrational nature, that they weren't always with manipulated intent, but they have been sabotaged as a species or a subspecies. There was one little boy in your talk yesterday who mentioned them as the scaries. Now, maybe that's just because it was a bit of a new experience for him rather than because they had any untoward measures. But when I imagine walking across a hillside and a ship coming down, and I've had dreams all the way through my childhood about various different encounters. Maybe they were real. I think they were probably dreams. There's always this question, if you go on that ship, Simon, will you come back? Do they have good intentions for you? Are they going to fill you with awesome data that you're going to get to use? Or are they going to take you apart, fill your brain with worm gears, and then send you back as a servant of some nasty forces? And could you speak to that question? Thank you.
Thank you.
And then you want an answer in a couple of minutes. Look, I would be extremely naive if I would accept, especially as a human, and knowing what humans can do to one another, that all the different intelligences visiting this planet have a benevolent attitude to mankind. I do think certain species are certainly very likely self-serving, is my way of putting it. And as well as those that I do think have a very benevolent attitude to us, and I think that's because a lot of us are connected to many of them, and there is definitely, the way that I look at it is this: primarily the outcomes give us a sense of what really is going on. You know, you can't grow good apples from a rotten apple tree. If an experience ultimately creates transformation, And in that transformation, in that person, in terms of changing their attitude to their world, to their connection to everything, to a more loving, expanded awareness, then ultimately I have to see that as a positive experience, even if sometimes it has been difficult or traumatic. Because for me, I have to go back to the soul journey, because it's the only way I can understand it. That as, you know, as we incarnate on this planet, we're given a lot of challenges, and part of that is to discern and to learn through our own experience what is loving and what is not loving. And some of us, I think, have picked a really rough ride because we really want to grow fast. And so I think sometimes, why is it some experiences have the most beautiful connections and never feel any fear, and why do 30% of my clients are absolutely traumatized? And for those, I've come to understand that through that, fear is an opportunity for expanded awareness, and what they've been fearing often is more about the unknown than the known. And when they've gone onto the craft and they've actually seen in regression what has actually happened, often there's been a complete shift. They may see medical procedures and actually healing going on the craft, but they've only remembered the fear. So it isn't as straightforward as saying there's good ones and there's bad ones. I think as a soul we come in to experience, and for some of us it is we're choosing more challenges than others, and what's good and what's bad is how we ultimately want to perceive. Two people with cancer, one will see it as a chance to grow and change and become different and change their lives. Others will say, I hate the world and I think it's a horrible world and it's everybody's fault. They've both got cancer, but one has chosen to use their experience as a transformative one. And I think this is an opportunity for us to really realize we're part of a cosmic community. How we want to approach them is going to be what we think, and what we are is the experience ultimately that we're going to get. That's how I understand it at the moment. Tomorrow might be different.
Thank you. Countryman.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Frank Rasmussen. I have a question for Mary. As a lot of other folks, I really enjoyed your speak last night. But I'm also a scientific guy, so I had a little bit of problem about your statement. Of course, maybe it was not all your statement, but about this dysfunctional kids we have today with Alzheimer's and ADHD. I've been doing a lot of research in electromagnetic radiation and know how that can damage DNA and things like that. So I can agree with you that it could be a byproduct of maybe star seeds or something like that, but it could also be an environmental damage caused by the way we have developed the technology in our society. What's your point on that?
I certainly think that certain forms of autism, I believe, may not be part of this. But what I have noticed, and I'm looking at patterns as a researcher, and what I've seen is those that have, children with ADHD, some with Asperger's, and some with certain types of autism, their parents are experiencers. They've had encounters, and this whole, exponential growth of these many different so-called dysfunctions made me wonder, why is that? Is it because of their ET encounters, or is it in fact due to environmental factors? And I certainly think environmental factors have a part to play in some of this. I'm not saying that's carte blanche right across the board, but I also know there have been autistic children that have been, literally savants. And what I'm finding with some of them too is they can't be programmed in a certain way, which actually is to their advantage, because many of them are seeing spirits, many of them are seeing ETs. Multidimensionally, many of them will tell their parents that they experience reality in an expanded way. And so I go back to the psyche of the extraterrestrials. Do we want to expand consciousness on this planet? How do we do it? We can try certain programs. Just like the ADHD gentleman in his 50s said to me, I always saw reality differently. Maybe this is what's going on. We need to become if you like, not so available to the consensus programming which limits us now. And because of that, it's seen as a dysfunction if we experience something in an expanded way, because they can't operate in this limited way, as many with ADHD will say, or Asperger's say, I don't get how you operate. And one Asperger's said to me, Mary, they say we can't socialise, but he said, between ourselves, we socialise very well, thank you, but we're honest. He said, social groups and social norms are not honest. Everyone has masks, and we can't be bothered with them. So we seem as dysfunctional. I'm sure some of you will get what I'm talking about. So I think it's in the mix. But how to separate it out, I can't say. But it certainly seems to be related, in many cases, to some new programs. And it's still just a hypothesis, but certainly some scientists that I know seem to accept this as a possibility.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Roy down the front's had his hand up for a little while, so if we come to you, Sheila's just rushing towards you. So we keep it snapping. We've got unfortunately about 13 minutes. So, oh yes, if you could stand up while you give your question, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
There's been references in connection with ET contact to implants, which apparently have been found physically and dealt with or whatever. What are these implants all about, and what are they supposed to be doing?
I'm going to turn that to Marcus, because I know you have quite a few people ringing up claiming they've had implants, as it were. So,
implants do happen, but they're usually put there by humans for tracking. You know, the famous 666, Book of Revelation and all that, Mark of the Beast and all that. It's a wonderful story. But why would they want to track us? What's the implant all about? I mean, it sounds frightening. Oh dear, you know, I'm being looked at by a satellite. Why? Why you? And that's the question I usually ask. Somebody rings up and says, they're watching me, they're photographing me. I say, why? What have you done to deserve it?
Mind you, all of us are now, of course.
Well, of course we are. We've been, actually, a point on that. Anybody here heard of the Yakuza Agreement? Thought not. UK-USA, it was signed in 1948, and it allowed the interception of communications between the 5 major powers, Britain, America, Canada, South Africa, Australia. That's what it was. And they tracked every communication, undersea telephone cables. If you've ever been to Cornwall and been to Goonhilly Down, that's the satellite transmission station for Britain and Europe, and then travel 60 miles west and look at Morwenstow. That's the government listening station that listens to all those satellites. So it's been happening for over 50 years. Nothing new. So implants, yes, there have been people who claim to have had implants. I've yet to see any hard evidence that the implant, when removed, is anything other than a biologically produced device or a biologically produced artifact around a foreign body in the human body. Maybe there are some, and Dr. Lear, who recently died, spent quite a long time investigating implants and has written quite a lot about it. But again, the question is why? Why you? Why are you? This person phoned up and said, yeah, look, they're photographing me. I can't get away from it. I say, what are they photographing? They're photographing my house. And I say, is it for sale? Oh, yes, it is, yeah. It's the estate agents. So there's usually an explanation. And by the way, there's just one thing I'd just like to point out in reference to several of the previous comments. There are in this world people we refer to as psychopaths. They are people who have very little empathy. They're destructive. They can be unpleasant people, but they're quite often very successful people. And it is said that 1% of the population are psychopaths. There's 200 people in this room. We do have to have a sense of proportion about some of these things. So, no, the answer to your question is yes, there may well be implants, but I have yet to see them or be persuaded that they are of extraterrestrial origin.
I should say here, I mean, now, Ken, you obviously are very politically active. You probably are monitored. Do you have any feelings about that? Anybody keeps an eye on you?
Well, in all truth, I feel honored and blessed to be targeted and treated as a terrorist and actually labeled as a terrorist, because in this upside-down Orwellian world of ours, it's a great compliment. If I was being treated with favor and not being harassed or intimidated, then I reckon I'd probably be part of the problem as opposed to part of the solution. So I would take it as a great compliment. But unfortunately, you know, this is not acceptable. I mean, the way that people who seek the truth, who speak the truth, are targeted is completely and totally unacceptable. But it also reveals the fragility of the system of power. They are deathly afraid of the truth. It is the worst enemy of the managers of the tyranny that we live under. And people are coming into awareness of so many truths that are unsustainable for them. And as we move down this path of either seeming self-destruction or enlightenment, and it seems like there's hardly any in between here, we're going to go down one path or the other. I find it actually quite amusing that the powers that be, NSA, monitoring everything and all that. This is a mad dog backed into a corner that's frightened to death of his own fallibility, and pretty much knows, if you ask me, they know deep down their whole system is crumbling. But that makes it also very dangerous, and we have to be aware of that. So take it as a compliment. Thank
you. Mark was our speaker yesterday. You've had your hand up for a while. Would you want to ask a question? Di, if you can hand it to Mark, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Would the panel care to offer any views on what went wrong with the People's Voice? I know Ken was a presenter on there. I did a show on there myself. But the People's Voice went into liquidation this week, and there were over £500,000 of public donations that have gone somewhere. I just wonder if the panel have any views on what happened, what went wrong.
I should just explain, for anybody that doesn't know, David Icke helped to found like the People's TV station on the internet and radio, and then gradually there were problems, and David himself was then thrown out some weeks back. So this is what we're referring to. Does anybody have any experience with this at all? Ken, I mean, obviously you've had experience there. What's your feeling? Without being defamatory, as we're on camera.
Let me just say that my experience with David Icke was very constructive, very positive. I was never in any way held back from saying what I felt I needed to say and what I felt was relevant. The environment that I experienced was really positive. But my experience also is that such endeavors will always be infiltrated. Even if you start off with good people, there will be those who will work their way in. They do it through volunteerism generally. They work hard, they do good things, they work their way in there, they start planting seeds, and all sorts of things happen. And it's a very effective system of subversion. It works very well. My mom passed on, though, this last February, and I left at the end of February, so I haven't been here for the last several months. So what's happened in that period of time, I really can't say. But all I can say is that I'm indebted to David Icke. I think he's a good man, despite the fact that he's human, just like the rest of us, and invariably will make mistakes. And what he did, I think, was monumental and beautiful. And whatever problems they've had, there was a lot of information on that station that was very important and very little discussed. And I think that's a great contribution to the process of human consciousness.
Okay, we've got very few minutes left. Any other snappy questions? Who? Yeah, choose. Somebody up the back hasn't had a go for a while. Here we go. Oh, all right, no, we've got one here.
Hi, yes. It was on the subject of the indigo children and the upgraded human, really. Is this a kind of process that's happening to everybody around the globe, or is this a kind of process that's next generation, i.e. these upgraded humans are the evolution of the human race, and our children's children will be this new race?
That's kind of obvious future ones, but I'd be curious to know your view on this as well, what you think about indigo children. So we'll start with you, but
I'll try and keep it really quick.
Yeah.
I think we're all a part of this. I think that, it's the 100th monkey, isn't it? When 10% of the planet gets it, or whatever the percentage is, the rest of us will be part of that process as well. But certainly the new children coming in are far more awake and aware, and they're part of assisting us, and they talk about themselves as being teachers. I think they'll be teaching us and helping us with an understanding, which is, the best I can say in a very short time.
Absolutely. So, Eltjo, as an astrophysicist, but also open to the other side, what's your feeling about indigo children and crystal children, etc.?
What I think, and that is actually a very interesting question.
You speak into the mic a little bit.
It's going to take me more than 1 minute, but I'll try to do my very best. I told you about this special theory of relativity, which is very complicated and which with a strange twist, you can make very simple, all right? Now, what I think is that where we're living in is a four-dimensional world. All right, so there's this direction, that direction, and there's a fourth one. Except we don't experience it. Why? Because, I explained to you that if you're moving very fast, all right, if an object is moving very, very fast, it contracts. A planet that's moving very fast turns into a Smarty shape, right? And if you go with the speed of light, it gets into an infinitely thin thing. Now, what I believe, and this is one of these hyper-brain thoughts I had, is that we are living in a four-dimensional world which had left, right, above, forwards, there's 3 dimensions, plus 1, but it's a spatial dimension, right? It's not time. It's a fourth spatial dimension. Because we are moving at the speed of light, this fourth dimension is contracted, and we can only experience a 3-dimensional world. It's because we move so fast. It's a silly thought, but if you take this assumption, you can work out a special theory of relativity on the back of a matchbox very, very quickly. So maybe there is something there. Then you had this problem about gravitation, right? It couldn't quite figure out. And at a certain moment, I made my notes, and it said, well, either we are in a 5-dimensional world, or we're in a 4-dimensional world, in which case we are moving, we're oscillating. The speed with which we're moving through space is not constant, but it's oscillating, which means that this contraction of the 4th-dimensional space into a 3-dimensional space is oscillating as well. And it has a period of about 3,000 to 6,000 years, something like that. But you can imagine that if it's really oscillating, then we're just going through a time where we're actually slowing down a little bit because of some motion, circular 4-dimensional motion, and the entire universe is slowing down. So this contraction of the 4th dimension is just relaxing a little bit. There will be a way for a mind to see that circle over there is not really a circle, it's a globe. You're seeing an additional dimension, except it's not, instead of a globe, it is a 4-dimensional globe, right? And I think if you're just born and you're not programmed yet, it's more easily adapted to recognize this. And I think that's where this phenomenon has come from. So yes, we're all involved.
Thank you very much. Right. Very briefly.
Just one observation. You can calculate that the number of souls presently incarnate on this planet is equal to the total number of souls who've ever incarnated on this planet. And we're running out of them. The new souls coming in are the ones who couldn't be bothered to fight for the space in the past, because it's a very special planet, this. It has one emotion, it has an emotion which is very much admired. The souls who are incarnating now are the ones who have the information, the message, and we should listen to them. They know what they're talking about.
Very good. Now, no more questions, I'm so sorry. We've got 3 minutes, and we always like to end the panel with a quick, literally 25-second, just some advice. How do we go out there positively and live our truth? So we'll start with you, Ken, very briefly, for a second. Your closing words until tonight.
Sorry, I forgot to say. I really find the process of what's happening in this world to be truly inspiring. I look back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I started to become somewhat aware, and the madness that happened with hardly a blink of an eye and any notice, as compared to today, when anything happens, there's immediate dissemination of information, exploration of what really happened. And for me, this is leading us down that path where any sane person would want to go. So for all the darkness and madness, I think the world is a beautiful place, and really we've got something so beautiful waiting for us as long as we have the courage to be able to pursue it. And this is what I see happening, and I think it's great.
Lovely. Thank you. Mary.
Two things when people say to me, you know, about all the darkness, I say this. Why would all these amazing children decide to incarnate and be born now? They're not being born for a waste of time. And me personally, I know I'm such an aggressive madam that I would say before I came here, if I'm going there and working hard for a waste of time, find some other mug. So I must think it's worthwhile. So for those two reasons, I think we're living in a place of really excitement and growth, and I think just enjoy the ride. I think it's going to be a great one.
I don't think I can improve very much on the inscription over the Eden Project put there by Tim Schmidt when he created it, which says, basically, work like you don't need the money, love like you've never been hurt, dance like there's nobody watching, sing like there's nobody listening, and live like it's heaven on earth.
Really lovely. I don't think I can add anything to that, really, except just to say, when I fly over the fields, I can't tell you the beauty. I'm surrounded by all these Elysian fields, and I just say to myself, aren't I lucky? And so many times in my life, I've just said, aren't I lucky? I think I'm a particularly lucky person, and I'd just like to say, when I look at that bottle of water, I see it as being half full. And this is how I think I want to look at life. As opposed to being half empty, that is a half full bottle of water.
Thank you.
Well, my bottle is entirely full.
No,
this is water, that's air. Thank you.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's over. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed that. Please give a massive round to our panel again. Please, thank you.